Every time you max out your credit card, it's a child screaming for help, disguised as a payment due. You don't have a financial life. You carry a financial legacy, one inherited through muffled arguments behind closed doors, slammed doors over unpaid bills, and the heavy silence after grocery trips. Growing up in a home where money was a monster, a ghost, or a punishment leaves invisible scars. And the deepest one is this: confusing survival with love and consumption with relief. What we call chronic debt is often just the symbolic continuation of a war your parents never won. The idea of freedom of choice is a myth when your emotional compass is wired for panic. If you grew up with parents who tore each other apart over coins, you learn to associate prosperity with conflict, pleasure with guilt, abundance with punishment. The gospel of magical entrepreneurship, just work harder, manifest wealth, you're not trying hard enough, ignores the deeper truth. Your psyche doesn't want to prosper, it wants safety. And safety, for those raised in emotional instability, often means repeating the chaos they know. Debt becomes a dark womb, painful but familiar. Your wallet doesn't lie. Every late payment, every maxed out card, every impulse buy traces back not to your paycheck, but to your past. You're not failing financially. You're surviving with emotional tools you inherited long before you could read. Your credit score is in your trauma's name, and until you unearth that buried history, written in the language of your family's pain, you'll keep reenacting it, masking abandonment with receipts and fear with shopping. This isn't a video about money, it's about exorcism, about seeing debt for what it really is, the voice of a child you silenced, because I was shaped by scarcity too. I grew up trying not to be a burden, feeling guilty for wanting, thinking freedom was a luxury, until I saw that my red numbers weren't from my bank, they were from my childhood. And to liberate your financial future, you must first heal the terrified child who became a debt-ridden adult. You don't remember the exact moment money became fear, but your body does. It remembers the tension when the doorbell rang and your parents froze, the whispers about bills piling up, the forced smiles at the checkout line, the tight feeling in your chest when you asked for something too expensive. What you called childhood was actually psychological boot camp in scarcity. You learned that wanting was dangerous, that desiring too much meant being ungrateful, that money was always a threat in disguise. That's why today, when you try to save, invest, or grow, you sabotage yourself. Your mind isn't fighting poverty. It's trying to stay loyal to your parents' pain. Because deep down, thriving feels like betrayal. As if earning more means abandoning those who raised you through struggle. You don't want to be better than them, so you quietly sabotage success to stay emotionally connected to your roots. An invisible bond, sealed by trauma, protected by fear of losing your origin story. Debt becomes a distorted rite of passage, a ritual of belonging. By living in financial chaos, you unconsciously reaffirm, I'm still one of them. You carry that burden like an emotional shield. If I'm still broke, I'm still loyal. That's why getting out of debt triggers anxiety. It's not just breaking digits, it's breaking ancestral vows. Becoming financially free feels like treason against the suffering that raised you. But the brutal, liberating truth is this: you don't honor your family by repeating their wounds. You honor them by healing what they couldn't, by turning scarcity into clarity, by exchanging blind loyalty for conscious liberation. And that liberation begins with one radical act: forgiving your wounded child for believing that wanting was wrong. Because it wasn't. Wanting is the first sign of life. And you deserve to live without being afraid to exist. What if your debt didn't start with a loan, but with a lullaby? Long before you owed the bank, you owed silence. You owed gratitude. You owed invisibility. You were raised to feel guilty for existing. Every expensive gift, every extra snack, every new pair of shoes came with an emotional invoice. This costs a lot. We can't afford this. You think money grows on trees? Without knowing it, your caregivers taught you that you were an expense, not a child. Emotional debt was the first bill you ever received. These patterns aren't passed through wills, they're passed through glances, half sentences, and absence. You grew up in a world where having was risky and wanting was shameful. So now, even when you earn well, you feel guilt when you spend. Or you overspend to silence a discomfort you can't explain, because your emotional system is wired for punishment. Whenever you approach abundance, something inside you screams, "This isn't for me." And then you sabotage, cancel the course, miss the payment, buy what you don't need, back to the cycle you know. This is the engineering of scarcity, an invisible architecture shaping your decisions without your consent. Because this isn't about finances, it's about affection, belonging, and survival. Money in this context is just the visible language of much deeper pain. And unless you translate that language, you'll keep saying to the bank what you wanted to say to your parents. See me, validate me, don't leave me. But the bank doesn't hug, it collects. And with every notice, your inner child bleeds a little more. What needs healing isn't your debt, it's your fractured identity. You're not just an adult with overdue bills. You're an emotional survivor trying to understand why you break down every time stability gets close. The answer is in the mirror. That tired look, that sigh after every purchase, that guilty relief after clicking buy. They're echoes of a childhood that was never heard. It's time to listen. You're not buying objects, you're buying symbols. Affection disguised as packaging, safety wrapped in bubble wrap, identity split into 12 easy installments. When you click checkout, you're not completing a transaction, you're trying to fill a void. Every impulse buy, every sudden craving for something you didn't even know you wanted, is an emotional ritual attempting to repair a shattered childhood. You buy to feel worthy, to quiet the voice that whispers, "You don't deserve this." And that voice? It's not even yours. The market knows this. Brands don't sell products, they sell emotional belonging. They're not offering you a phone, a jacket, or a car. They're offering a symbolic hug, an unspoken compliment, a silent, "You matter now." They know your wounded brain equates consumption with affection, and they exploit that gap like emotional predators. You become a puppet to a craving that isn't yours, but was implanted long ago. Because no one told you that what you truly wanted was never in a bag. It was validation, touch, presence, and that's how the trap closes. Because the pleasure of buying is real, but fleeting. It lasts seconds. Then comes the crash. Guilt, fear, self-hatred. You feel weak, dumb, broken, but you're not. You're trapped in a cycle of pain and reward designed to repeat. An emotional addict calling debt bad luck when it's actually ritual. A ritual of anesthesia. And until you break it, you'll keep trying to buy relief at compound interest rates of suffering. Real luxury today is knowing what you're actually trying to buy. Not with money, but with emotion. Because when you realize your full cart is hiding an empty heart, something shifts. The click loses its magic. The purchase confirmation becomes a question. What am I trying to feel? And that question, simple and symbolic, might be the key. Because you no longer have to pay for affection that should have been yours all along. You've been close to breaking the cycle. You've had a good month, an unexpected gig, a surge of motivation, but something always slips. A surprise expense, a delay, a wrong decision. It's not bad luck, it's programming. There's a part of you that panics when life starts going right. Prosperity sets off alarms in your nervous system. This isn't safe. And maybe, for your childhood brain, it wasn't. Growing up where money caused pain taught you that having too much is dangerous. Envy, fights, loss. That's why you procrastinate. Ignore that email, cancel that course. Not because you're lazy, but because you were taught that growth equals pain. And your brain is a master at avoiding pain, even if it costs your adult future. Sabotage isn't weakness, it's a survival mechanism. A desperate attempt to maintain emotional stability, even if that stability is built from chaos. And once sabotage becomes habit, you don't even realize you're constructing your own ruins. The cruelest part? Society celebrates it, calls it humility. Being realistic, staying grounded. And you wear these masks to justify a fear that isn't even yours. It's inherited. ancestral fear from generations who only knew struggle. But that struggle ended. And you keep fighting alone in your own mind out of loyalty to a war that no longer exists. That fear doesn't protect your lineage anymore. It just traps you. This is where the cycle must break. Not with spreadsheets, but with conscious emotional rituals. Every sabotage must be treated like a recurring nightmare. What are you trying to avoid? Who are you afraid to become if you succeed? The free adult you fear may be the only one capable of holding the scared child still living inside you. And only when those two versions of you make peace will sabotage stop being protection and start becoming liberation. The biggest debt you've ever carried never appeared on your credit report. It lives in the forgotten corners of your emotional memory. It's the debt you owe the child you once were, the one who held in tears to avoid being a burden, who pretended not to want, just to keep peace, who learned to apologize for existing. You grew up thinking adulthood meant erasing yourself. That maturity was measured by how much suffering you could endure. But now, hear this. True maturity is breaking inherited pain. It's choosing not to repeat. If you've made it here, it's because something in you is tired. Tired of trying and failing. Tired of effort that slips through your fingers. That exhaustion isn't laziness, it's grief. Grief for a childhood that never had a chance. For dreams aborted before birth. For a story that didn't start with you but might need to end with you. You are not to blame for the scarcity you inherited, but you are responsible for what you do with it now. This isn't about earning more money. It's about reclaiming your birthright to deserve, without guilt, without performance, without pain. It's about redefining value, not in terms of income, but in rest, silence, and presence. That redefinition begins with one symbolic act, recognizing that your debts speak. They speak of abandonment, of fear, of longing. And now, finally, you're listening. A child watches her parents fight over money and learns that safety is control. A boy hears silence after every purchase and learns that desire is dangerous. Years later, their adult selves buy things they don't need, just to feel something familiar. Debt becomes a lullaby, a structure, a repetition of a wound dressed in digits. But if you can name the spell, you can break it. Map of occult reprogramming. Not to fix your finances, but to retrieve the part of you that never felt safe wanting more. You can keep paying interest on a pain that was never yours. Or you can stop, look inward, and declare, this emotional war disguised as debt ends with me. That is the real payment. Not to the bank, but to your story. And whoever makes that payment is finally free. If your childhood haunts your finances, comment below. I heal my past.